Welcome all and welcome back. So in this session, in the continuation of the previous, we are going to understand about what the PaaS offering is. So when we say PaaS, so they provide an environment for building, testing and deploying our software component with a less control compared to the infrastructure as a service. That is, we are not going to have a RDP access over the VM, for example. The goal of the PaaS is to help create the application as quickly as possible without having to worry about managing the underlying infrastructure and its configuration. As an example, we can take when we deploy a web application using the PaaS, we don't have to install the operating system, the web server, their updates and related configuration. The PaaS is a complete development and deployment environment in the cloud with resources that enable organization to deliver everything from a simple cloud-based app to a very sophisticated and a complex enterprise level application. Now what that means in overall, so if we compare it with the infrastructure as a services, the PaaS also exists to provide the same feature. So you will be given an instance where you will be given a mode of the deployment. With that mode, you will be able to host the web application and its related components like API and other thing. In the same way how you were previously doing it in the infrastructure as a service. The only difference is that we are not going to interact with the operating system and its underlying configuration. So this has shedded off a responsibility from the shoulder of the developers, which enabled them to execute and develop more business functionality compared to that of the infrastructure as a services. Now again, the same concept of the cloud computing will apply here. All these offerings and the resources are available from the cloud service provider as a pay-as-you-go basis, and they can be accessed over the wire while using some internet connection, that is HTTPS or whatever it is. Now we're going to understand about the few characteristics of the PaaS. So if we look into it, we have upfront cost, which is not applicable in case of the PaaS. So there is no upfront cost and user pay only for what they consume. Now the second point about user ownership. The user here is responsible for the development of their application. However, they are not responsible for managing the server or any kind of infrastructure and its related configuration. So what this helps, as already mentioned, this allows the user to focus more on the application development and the workload they want to run and the runtime and all these things instead of managing and configuring the infrastructure, the web service and all those things. So in other way, these are all fine-tuned based on the runtime you have selected while creating the PaaS resource in the cloud. Now if we look into what the cloud provider will be responsible for, so obviously since you have set up the responsibility of the operating system, so they will be responsible for managing the operating system as well as the networks configuration plus the service configuration. So it's the responsibility of the cloud provider for typically everything apart from the application that a user want to run. So they provide a complete managed platform on which we will run our application. So here comes a very important concept, henceforward we'll be going and referring it, that is called as managed resource or a managed platform. So whenever a responsibility that has been handed over by the users to the cloud provider and the things become easy in terms of the user to focus more on the workload and the application development, so that shaded off responsibility we will be calling it as a managed service or a managed platform. This is applicable across the cloud and it's known by this term only. From the developer's point of view, let's take and understand a common scenario. So if we take a development framework, the PaaS provide a framework that a developer can build upon to develop and customize any of their application. In a similar way how the V works in previously with the Microsoft Excel macros, So PaaS let a developer create application using built-in software components. The cloud features such as scalability, high availability, and the multi-tenant capability, which we have initially discussed in the concept of the what is a cloud computing. So these all are still applicable with the PaaS. So you, even if the application is hosted in the PaaS, they are still having those features of high scalability, high availability, and all those things. So this helps reducing the amount of the coding that a developer must do in order to include the scalability and high availability concept inside it application. So this has been taken up care by the cloud provider. Now the next scenario where this PaaS can be useful is the analytics and the business intelligence. So the tools that provided as a service with the PaaS, they allow the organization to analyze and mine their data. They can find insights and the pattern and predict the outcome to improve the business decision such as forecasting, product design, investment return. So the add-on tools are there, analytics is there with all the PaaS offering. This helps them to understand where the user is landing, which page the user is liking the most. Before a user will give the feedback, this analytics will take those user behavior and made it available to the developer to know, understand, fine-tune their application. So the enhanced analytics on the PaaS, they help the business to forecast their investment and try to improve their product design in case if it is anything applicable. Now we're going to understand about the SaaS, that is software as a service. So SaaS is a software in itself that is centrally hosted and managed for the end user. So it allows users to connect to and use the cloud-based app over the internet. Some of the examples can be how we use the Gmails, Yahoo, Outlook, the calendars, the office tools such as Microsoft Office 365. And this can be typically based out of some monthly or some annual subscription, where the Office 365 is an example of the SaaS softwares. Now let's dig into the few basic characteristics of the SaaS offering. When we compare SaaS against the upfront cost, so user, they don't have any upfront cost. They pay a subscription typically on the monthly and the annual basis. They don't hold the infrastructure, they don't hold the deployment of the application. User ownership. So user here is a user, or just they use the application software. They are not responsible for any maintenance and the management of the software. The third point is how the cloud provider ownership is involved. So if you look at the SaaS, the cloud provider is responsible for provisioning, management, and maintenance of the application software. So most of the responsibility is now with the cloud provider. A common use case scenario which we have in our day-to-day life is the use of Office 365, Skype, Microsoft Dynamics CRMs, and others. Now this two-session completes our discussion on the infrastructure as a service, PaaS and SaaS. In the next session, we're going to understand how these three services, that is infrastructure as a service, PaaS and SaaS, they provide the advantages and what are the critics, that is the disadvantage that sits with them, and how we can do a trade-offs between all these things whenever we have to design some application. Thank you all. I request you to please subscribe the channel in case if you are not, and stay tuned and have engaged learning. Thank you.